I have this friend who absolutely loves cheese. For the longest time, he would rave and rant and tell anybody who would listen about any kind of new fantastic cheese that he just discovered. But then he was tangentially involved in this industrial accident, and even though he didn't get hurt, he got a huge settlement, but it required that he sign all kinds of NDAs and divorce himself completely from the company. Since he'd worked there for a long time, he was kind of depressed for a while. But then he started using his free time and his financial windfall of going on a cheese tour of the world. He even started a cheese blog, and not only did it become wildly popular, but he started making way more money from his cheese hobby than he ever did at his company. The evolution of society and the evolution of companies follow a very similar path. They both start out small and nimble, filled with creative and hungry people. But as they grow larger and larger, they become more top-heavy. One of the most curious things from history is the first ever recorded code of laws from Hammurabi. They can't tell why specifically he created that code of laws. One side holds that it was created to protect the lower classes from the upper classes. Other people suggest it was created to specifically give the upper classes a reason and the wherewithal to loophole their way to the top, to continuously get more and more power, but to always have a legitimate and legal reason for doing so. Some recent fossil discoveries have called into question the relationship between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. Up until now, it's been widely believed that Neanderthals were essentially big dumb brutes, but as humans outpopulated them with our logical thinking brains and super genius creativity. But the DNA embedded within these new fossil records may tell a different story. One possible scenario that is now starting to make its way into the mainstream is that the Neanderthals were much more intelligent than previously thought. So intelligent that they communicated largely with telepathy, and they could somehow tap into the free energy of the universe to create massive and complex civilizations without needing to resort to extracting energy from the environment. At the time, humans were considered to be the dumb cousins of the Neanderthals. There is sufficient evidence that most of us have about 2% Neanderthal genes in our DNA. But what they now suspect is that ancient humans repeatedly tried to copy the Neanderthal technology, but we repeatedly failed. So instead of working with them, but as lesser beings, we decided to kill them and eat them. And once we killed and ate our superiors, we had to resort back to the ancient energy extraction, environmentally destructive hunter-gatherer way of life. This is why society and its technology has crawled to a snail's pace ever since. One theory postulates that all rulers of all societies create legal codes for one reason, and that is to justify their power that they seized from a might makes right standpoint. But once they have power, they create a set of laws to hopefully legitimize their ill-gotten gains. But eventually a new class of elites come along and see all the flaws in the legal code and exploit it for their own purposes. The peasants who believe in the honesty of the law code are always the last to find out, and they are always on the outside looking in. And they always just start to wake up right on the verge of collapse. Once both structures become top-heavy, they end up collapsing. Societies are eventually too top-heavy, and they have way too many people in charge and too few people producing anything. Large companies end up only protecting market share, and they always get outmaneuvered by young, hungry startups, almost always being driven by disruptive innovation. Eventually, he had literally tried all the cheeses in the world, so he did the next best thing. He used his millions to hire a few famous cheese scientists from around the world and started inventing new cheeses. Now he's making tons of money and having the best time of his life with his new cheese empire.